Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate you being here. Senator McKinney and I are here on behalf of our respective caucuses. All of you are very well aware of the fact that just about 24 hours ago, we as a state received new news, a new reality, if you will, from the Office of Policy and Management and the Office of Fiscal Analysis, who did their consensus revenue figures. What it showed is that the surplus for fiscal year 14, the fiscal year we are in, has been dramatically reduced by about $462.2 million from what it was originally anticipated to be, which was $504 million. In addition to that, the fiscal year 2015 budget had a shortfall of just shy of $300 million, or $282.6 million. Senator McKinney and I, the House Republicans and Senate Republicans, were here, roughly a week ago to present our alternative to the budget adjustments made by both the governor and the Democrats in the Appropriations Committee. We realize that all of us need to adopt the new reality of yesterday's revenue numbers, and we did just that, and we're here to report to you within 24 hours how we handled that situation. With regard to the first problem, that being the fiscal 14 excess revenue, as we call it, surplus as they call it, it has to be reduced from $404.6 million to $42 million. You might recall that we had several items wherein we proposed the use of that excess revenue. Unfortunately, because of the economic news, we are not able to go through with many of those things. For instance, the additional payment against the economic recovery notes, the debt payment, which was a $196 million payment. We are no longer able to make that payment. We're no longer to make the payment toward the state employees' pension liability, nor are we able to offer the slight tax release for restoration for tax-exempt restoration, for the non-prescription drugs, nor are we able to reinstitute the exemption for the clothing and footwear sales tax, which we were doing 11 months in advance. What we are able to do is at least make this year's payment against the Unemployment Compensation Fund special assessment to the tune of $15 million, as well as devote $27.4 million of the remainder of the surplus towards debt reduction, either by way of partial payment of the ERN notes or other outstanding debt. With regard to the fiscal 2015 deficit problem, wherein we had a $282 million shortfall based on the new revenue figures. The first stop was OFA, wherein we found that in current services, they had done some recalculations and found that their current services estimates were approximately $49.4 million too high. So there was a savings right there of $49.5 million. We also, unfortunately, could not go through with our phase-in of the pension income tax exemption. That would save us $19.6 million. The $45 million surplus we had obviously is now non-existent. We could not make the additional payment to the economic recovery note debt service of $150 million. We also had to reduce the municipal revenue sharing account by $5 million, but still note that it is still more municipal aid than the Democrats and the governor have offered in their preceding budgets. And it fully restores, once again restores the account which had completely been eliminated by the governor and the Democrats. We also instituted a hard hiring freeze at the savings of $5.6 million, a statewide travel ban saving $2.3 million, and reduced the legislative management budget by $5 million. You add all of that up, we come to balance. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are presenting you today is a budget that deals with the new reality. It is balanced. It has completely no gimmicks whatsoever. It is the lowest spending budget of all the budgets presented, including the enacted budget last year. It is under the spending cap, and most importantly, it is honest, and it does not have Keno. This is our proposal to our counterparts on the other side of the aisle and to the governor's office. You might note that in the next couple of days, the Democrats will do their version. This is very simple, folks, for all of you who watch out there. How will they handle the same problem? If they do not handle it by either adding excess new revenue or showing you spending cuts. They are handling like they have handled it in the past, with gimmicks, smoke and mirrors. When you do an honest budget, it's very clear and easy to explain how you arrive at a balanced budget. That's what we have done. Senator McKinney.
Thank you, Larry. Let me just be very brief. The reality we all face today in Connecticut is that our economy is not doing as well as we want. And since 2008, when the economic recession hit, we have all heard from our constituents very consistent comments about the concern over their jobs and layoffs and their small businesses. And the universal statement coming from people across the state of Connecticut is we are being asked to make sacrifices. We are being hit more by this recession. When is government going to do the same? Why can't government tighten their belts like we've had to in our family budgets or at our small business? When are you guys going to get it? This budget does that. There are no gimmicks. We're not borrowing to cover operating expenses, things that people in the real world can't do. And most importantly, we are sending a message to the people of the state of Connecticut that we in government are going to tighten our belts just as you have done. And that's why some of the biggest reductions in here come from government itself. $5 million less to the legislative branch. I promise you the legislature will continue to operate without that $5 million. A hard hiring freeze. We do not need to increase the size of state government during this bad economic time. And the third one, which Larry talked about, was a hard travel ban. Do we need entire departments and state agencies going on week-long or weekend-long research gathering expeditions, which we know are really just parties, at the expense of the taxpayers of the state of Connecticut? People who haven't been able to take their families and kids on vacation, yet state employees, agencies, department heads are taking themselves and their employees on vacations at the expense of those taxpayers. So that's the message today. We want the people to know that we get it, and we're going to ask government to make the sacrifices that they've been making for the past 4 to 5 years.
Ladies and gentlemen, when we put out our first budget, it's always curious to see what our good friends have to say about it. They didn't have much to say because it was pretty straightforward and easy to understand. They said there was phantom savings, and yet many of you rightfully reported it was the most detailed budget that you had had to date. We showed every single nickel of every single cut. We showed how we restored every single gimmick. They or anybody out there might not like our budget, but I defy you to say that there's phantom savings. I defy you to say there's gimmicks in this budget. We had to play the cards we were dealt and make the best hand for the state of Connecticut in an honest and straightforward way. That's what we have done given the new reality as of yesterday. We'll be glad to take any questions.